Good morning to everybody in TV land. This is Mike Hittner with Historic Point Basse Update. And today with me, joining me on my right, is Bev Ross. Welcome, Bev.
Thank you.
She's one of our citizens down there, and we're going to talk a little with Bev about some things that she does down there and what she likes and some of her background and that sort of thing. First thing, I'd like to give a great big shout out to the Nakusa Lions. Last night, July 10th, I talked to their meeting in Nakusa, and I gave a short presentation on Historic Point Basse, and they know a little bit about some of our issues with we have to put a new roof on our house and everything. And when we're all done, the president, Cal, handed me a check, and he said something, and I thought 200 maybe or something like that, which would be very, very generous. But the check was for $2,000. And thank you so much to the Nakusa Lions and the great support they've given us for that roof project, and that'll give us a long way towards finishing up that project, and at least it pays for more than half of the shingles. So thanks so much to Nakusa Lions, and thanks again for the invitation to come and talk with you. So now we'll go on to the regular part of the program, which is we review a little bit of our Point Basse Pioneer Festival. Bev was in the schoolhouse, plays the school teacher, school marm. Bev, your ideas and thoughts from when you were working in the schoolhouse. It was kind of a hot day. The traffic was a little lighter. You were there on Saturday only, right? Mm-hmm. Give us an idea of what transpired in the schoolhouse, because I don't really get there because I'm more on the other side of the river or the creek, I guess, in this regard.
Well, we had a nice group of visitors that for the first part of the time that I was there, it did get a storm, and so people kind of scattered a little bit, but I enjoyed my time in the schoolhouse. There's a lot of questions about my personal experience. I went to a one-room schoolhouse, and so it's always fun to talk about those days. And they ask about the schoolhouse itself and its history and the first teacher who was there, and there's a lot of interesting things that many of the kids come in like to sit right in the chairs, and so that gives them a little idea of what those days were like. And there's slates that they get to draw on and sort of express themselves. And
do you get anybody, Bev, parents, grandparents, with the children that say, well, I went to a one-room school too? Do you get some of that feedback?
Quite often,
really?
Right. They'll know their grandmother did, or their mother, and there's many individuals that I've met that also had a few years at least in a one-room schoolhouse, so it's a fun time.
It's a great experience, and I think for us at Point Basse, it's great having a student of a one-room school interpreting it, because that's kind of disappearing. There isn't too many of those left out there anymore. I think most of them must be, if they're not 60, pushing 60 probably, I think, just because
Not me.
Not Bev here, of course, but that's the exception to the rule. She started school when she was two.
Yes.
But the situation is, in our area anyway, the one-room schools closed basically in 1960 with the consolidation of the school districts into Wisconsin Rapids. And so anybody had to be in the schools before 1960. So we just look at it mathematically, and you can kind of figure out that most of those people are probably anywhere from 55 to 70 years old or somewhere in that area. So we had a good day on Saturday. The house was busy, and we had a good flow of people coming and going. Don Matthews, one of our volunteers that kind of heads up the ice cream in the 3-bay shed, was very busy making batches of ice cream, and all the children and adults enjoyed that ice cream and everything. And the site was busy. We had a good day. Sunday we kind of counted on as our date that we make our profit for the weekend, and of course Sunday we had that storm that rolled through about 12:30, 1 o'clock, and so it kind of scared some of the people away, because Sunday's a later crowd because they come after church, and usually it's 12:30, 1 o'clock when they come. And I saw with that storm coming through and the radar showing dark green around Wisconsin Rapids, Point Basse, it cut down on the crowd on Sunday. But overall, the weekend was good. We made a profit, which is always good. It's one of our fundraising events, so we hope and need to make a profit to pay for different expenses that we have. So overall, I thought it was very good. A little bit now. Bev touched a little bit on her experience in going to a one-room school. Give us a little background, because I know, Bev, that you've been involved in community theater in Wisconsin Rapids and Stevens Point both, and a little background. You went to a competition with the gin game, and a little background where you come from, kind of a theater background and that sort of thing.
Well, I started in Silver Foxes. It's a little subgroup of the Wisconsin Rapids Theater that's just oriented to those over 55. And so I got a little taste of what it was like to be on stage, and I enjoyed it. And got a part. My first role was in Harvey as Vita, Elwood Dowd's sister, so that was quite fun. And then from there I just auditioned for parts here and in Stevens Point. And then, like Mike said, I did undertake this this project of the Gin Game, which is a two-person play. And we
Do you find, Bev, that gin game is two persons harder than if you had a whole stage full of people, or how is that play, or is it as natural as having 10 people on the stage? How is it with just two people working?
I guess, well, you know, the fear is to learn your lines. How are you going to learn out of a 70-page play? 35 of those pages are yours.
Yes.
I think I developed a sort of an appreciation for two-person smaller plays and big casts, because there's a lot of downtime when you have a huge cast, and you spend a lot of time and you have 2 minutes on stage, and
Right.
so I appreciate the more concentrated.
And you were working with
show. Greg.
Yes.
Yes.
And so that was, I think the chemistry was good. From what I saw, I think the chemistry was
Well, he's
really
had
good.
a lot of experience in acting, so I learned a lot from him too. So that was a good opportunity, just to be in with other actors that have had more experience than me. I enjoy that. But
And then you went to what? You did the regional competition, or the
State
competition, and it was
Yeah, I
in
went to-
Stevens Point.
Yes, we went to state, and we did go on to regionals, but we didn't go from there. But we did.
Yeah, well, that's quite an accomplishment. I think it was just you and the Stevens Point group that went on to
Right.
the regional competition, so that was good. And then when did they have the final competition? Is that going to be in like
That was
Rochester?
in July. I think it's probably this weekend or
Rochester, Minnesota.
Yes.
Was it? Yes. So that
or
was
last weekend. But
Yeah, it was kind of exciting, and I think Don had mentioned something about one of the plays that advanced out of the regional. It was written by somebody within the group, and it was a production, so it was he said it was really well done, so it was a tough one to go up against.
right.
You hit some of those once in a while where it's, it's tough competition sort of thing, but congratulations on you and
thank
for you and
you.
Greg going that far and everything, which sometimes you never know where it's going to go.
Right. But what I appreciated most is having this little bit of experience, and then taking that experience to the Spirit Walk and playing Mrs. Wakely, Mary Wakely in the Spirit Walk. So
Yeah.
that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that.
Yeah. The only thing I
Take us-
heard that you said you wish you had a little more of was a little more background of Mary Wakely, because it'd have fleshed the character out for you.
Well,
a little bit
yeah, I
more.
used everything I had,
Right.
and then I combined. There was 2 or 3 scripts from other years that I kind of added and
You kind
tried to
of
put it into a coherent story for her. But I used everything I had at that time.
And unfortunately for us on the site, we know a little bit about Mary Wakely and a little of her background, but not a lot. I mean, you could put it in one paragraph, and I think that would be maybe even stretching it.
But I did. It kind of piqued my interest. I wanted to learn a little bit more about her and, like you say, her background and
Yes.
about them as a family or as a unit.
Yeah. So you've done that. You've been in which we're going to talk about soon. Here is the Whodunit, But and you also interpret for schools, right? At the schoolhouse for
Yes,
school groups.
I meet the school groups, right.
Do you enjoy working with students?
I do. I like the younger ones the best. They're always easy. The fourth graders, I never know what they're going to ask me, and if I don't know if I can answer the questions. But
I have
like
that same problem with fourth graders. I always tell the parents that come along as guides or chaperones, I said, you know, those first graders and second graders and mostly third graders, they'll ask all kinds of questions and everything, and it'll be very interesting and a lot of, you know, rapport, a lot of dialogue going on. When it gets to fourth graders, for some reason, now all of a sudden, they don't want to make a mistake or seem foolish in front of their classmates, so they don't ask any questions. And then they just sit there like, you ask them a question and they all sit there and look at you.
Or they'll ask who was the 21st president. And I don't know.
Just trying to trip you up.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Tell them it was not the 20th president when you were representing the school,
Right.
but it probably was past that. It's the 21st. So, anything in particular you liked? Any position you like? School teacher? You like playing Mary Wakely for the Spirit Walk? You'll again this year when we do Whodunit play Mary Wakely with me as doing Robert Wakely. We've done this 2 or 3 times now, so we kind of know it a little bit, sort of thing. So we'll go into, it's a good segue to go into Whodunit. And this year our Whodunit, written by Luke J. Conkle, a local writer, now lives in Green Bay area, has written the last probably 6 of them. Rhonda Whetstone wrote the first 2, and after that Luke has written all the rest of them. And he's got a good storyteller's mind, and we were on the radio yesterday, and he was going through it, and so he kind of goes frontwards and backwards on the thing, because he's got to make sure when he puts a character in how it relates to the other character, that there's no overlap or conflict there or something. I don't know how they write. I'm not a writer, so I don't know how they do that, but you got to weave it very carefully, put it together so that your plot comes out and everything like that. And so Luke has got one called Ice Mummy, and this one is about Archer Dillon, who was a kind of ne'er-do-well, came up from Missouri, a worker, kind of helped out around Point Basse and some other places, and then he kind of disappeared. Everybody thought he went back to Missouri. Well, lo and behold, when they're cleaning the ice house out, in the bottom of the sawdust, there is this body that they think is Archer Dillon. So now we're going to have to solve that great mystery of who done it. Was he die of natural causes, kind of unlikely underneath the ice pile and the sawdust, or did he be murdered by somebody and put in there in that place? So that'll be the great mystery to solve this year. That'll be our Whodunit is on July 29th, which is a Saturday, from 2 to 5 p.m. at Historic Point Basse. You'll come down and you'll register and pay your admission, $5 for adults, $2 for students, and then you get a little booklet. It has a map of the site, tells where all the characters are. Bev and I will be in the house, and
Mr. and Mrs. Wakely,
yes.
He was a shiftless fellow. I have to keep him in line every time.
Yeah, well, I need a lot of guidance here.
Absolutely.
So you'll notice that when you come down and Whodunit. So anyway, the different characters will be different sites. They'll have a blacksmith. There'll be a sawyer. There'll be an iceman. There's a sheriff. There's a Catholic priest. There's a French voyageur and his wife or lover. There's a school teacher. There's a Doc Amundsen, so a blacksmith. So we got a good cast, 14, I believe, characters in all. And then there's also Alice Wakely and Newbold Wakely, so the 2 children of the Wakeleys. So it'll be kind of interesting, the interchange. And what we usually do in the house, as an example, is Mary and I, Bev here, will be in the kitchen area and on the dining room table, and then we'll put usually Alice in the parlor, and then upstairs, since we got 4 of us, we'll put Newbold probably upstairs, because we can separate them out. Because a lot of times people have questions, maybe for us, but they don't want too much the other person to hear necessarily what we're asking, because they'll ask maybe Alice Wakely a question about Ma and Pa, and they want to see if they can find an inconsistency there, and they're trying to look for clues about who done it and that sort of thing. So.
And Mary Wakely is the town gossip, and so she always has to be in the know, and so she's the one to ask, because she'll tell
Yeah,
you.
if you want to know anything, you'd
Go to Mary Wakely.
Mary Wakely, because she knows whatever is happening on the site, and even sometimes beyond the site. Well, as they say, it's out of sight. But it's a great time. You get that little booklet, like I was mentioning, with a map on it. It's got a little thumbnail sketch of each of the characters. So you got a little beginning and then a little storyline, and then you go out to solve the mystery. Now, did this Archer Dillon, Mr. Dillon, did he die of natural causes or whatever? We don't know. And the best part about it is the cast, Bev and I in this case, don't know anything either. Luke keeps it all to himself until we have the grand reveal at 5 o'clock. We're all in the dark as much as he is. Now, we have some suspicions that it might be so-and-so or whatever. And of course, we're even asked to, at times, cast aspersions on one of the other citizens of Point Basse, because sometimes they seem...
Because we all could be guilty, but we're not going to admit to that.
Right. And Luke has been very good at writing these. I tell him sometimes a little too difficult, Luke. Make it so we get at least 6 or 8 people that figure it out. Because some years we've had where there hasn't been anybody figured it out. And so we have to leave enough clues there, and he has to give us enough information to give as clues so that people can figure out who done it. Now, we don't want everybody figuring it out, but it'd be nice to have 6 or 8 figured out, because it kind of makes it challenging but not impossible sort of thing. So, do you like any particular part of who done it in particular, Bev? I kind of like the little bit of improv, because we're given a little bit of a character of a synopsis of ourselves and what we were doing and how involved. This case will be especially hard, folks, because it's been a couple years since this Archer Dillon disappeared. So how much can we even remember? You know, we look at us up here, we got old timers disease. So I mean, so it'll be hard for us to remember some of those things. It's a little further off for us. So, but I like the part I like is about improv. We can come up with stuff. We can't tell you something that isn't true, but we can lead you a little astray without going too far. So do you enjoy that part too, Bill?
Yes, I do. This is the 4th year that I've done it. The first year I was the Sawyer's wife, and I had done it. And then I was reincarnated as Mary Wakely.
Right.
And so the last 2 years, and now this will be my 3rd year as Mary Wakely. So I'm getting into character.
Yes.
I guess a little bit. And like I said, keep Robert in line. He likes to hit the bottle a little bit, and you never quite know. Some nights, you know, he doesn't come home real early, and
it's my nerves, folks.
Yes. So that makes it kind of fun when you start kind of growing in a character a little bit.
Yeah, and Bev and I think most of the characters that have somebody else with them, you know, it'd be a little harder to just be by yourself, because we can play off each other. And then Bev will scold me for, you know, not coming home early that night, and where were you? And then the people, the audience, are wondering, was he the guilty one? Did it happen that night? You know, they don't know for sure. Bev doesn't know. She just said he came home late one night, and then he should have been home earlier.
So that does make it fun.
Yeah, and the beauty of it is, like Bev said, she didn't know. She was a Sawyer's wife, and she was guilty party. But she didn't know anything about it until the reveal.
Yeah, I didn't know. I was guilty, but I...
Yeah. So if you enjoy whodunit, mystery type of things, I know there's been some in the area. Town of Rome players have done a mystery theater in a dinner sort of setting, which works very well, and I applaud them for doing that. We have our own version of it at Point Basse, so July 29th, it's a Saturday, from 2 to 5 p.m. Now, some people ask, how early should I get there? I said, you all want to wait for the reveal. We have a big ballot box where you put your ballot in, voting for who you think did it, or it could be a couple people. If it could be multiple people getting involved. And the reveal is at 5 o'clock. Now, if you've never been there and you haven't been to one of these whodunits before, I'd suggest you give yourself probably closer to 2 hours minimum. if you've been in one and you're real organized and you've got friends with you and you kind of all play off each other and you know what's kind of, you've been these before, you know, you could probably do it in an hour and a half. But a lot of times what you do is you get a story from a character such as Robert or Mary Wakely. You want to go back after somebody else says something to question them about, you know, what about this? You know, because every character throws out a few hints about some other character. So allow yourself, I think, be on the safe side, hour and a half, 2 hours. So it's a lot of fun. $5 for adults, cheap entertainment, $2 for students. You're all welcome down there. You get a nice booklet that you can go around, a nice map on it. So come on down and Historic Point Basse and see the Who Done It, July 29th from 2 to 5 p.m. Thanks, Bev, for being with me this morning, and we'll see you down there on the 29th, if not before.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks, folks.
Well, hello. Welcome to the Wakely house. Isn't this a gorgeous flower bed in front of the house? This is flowers that are period correct for the Wakely home. The Wakely home is an 1840 to 1860 time, and we're here in lovely Wisconsin, and I'd like to show you our home. This is the original home of Mary and Robert Wakely. They did arrive here on the Wisconsin River in 1837. She had 2 children and she was pregnant with a third. The home was not ready for them, so they did stay for 2 years in a lean-to while the home was being constructed. I'd like to invite you to come to the Wakely home and the Wakely site to see all the exciting things we have to offer you. Thank you. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Well, here we are at the entrance to Historic Point Basse. We're at the parking lot. And this is where the sign is for the quilt garden that is sponsored by the Wood County Master Gardeners, and some of the flowers are out in front just getting ready to bloom. The volunteers come out here and weed it, plant the flowers, and take care of it. They also have flower beds up by the schoolhouse, and we'll be seeing that later on in the day.
Okay, when you come down to the Pioneer Festival today, the admission cost for an adult is $5. For students is $2, and children under 5 are free. All kinds of stuff to see and do. The kids get a piece of fur to trade at the trading post to see what other treasure they can come out with, and it's just a great family day and a great time to be had by all.
Well, we've left the ticket stand now, and we're headed down the trail. We're headed towards the Historic Point Basse site. So, nice, lovely trail here we've got.
Well, as we're walking towards the Historic Point Basse site, we come across the wooden footbridge here. That's to get us across Wakely Creek. And off to our right is a bridge that was built by the Wakely boys back in when they were here in the 1840s. It was made out of rocks, and the bridge is still there in existence from when they built it back in 1840, and that's how Wakely Road goes across there to get another way to get to Historic Point Basse campsite.
Well, here we are at Ma Wakely's kitchen. This is a chance for you to get a little bite to eat, something to drink, and sit down in the cool shade and enjoy the meal. They have a choice of hamburgers, hot dogs, some barbecue, they have dessert, they have lemonade, they have some sodas, they got root beer, some cream soda and some black cherry soda. So I think it's time to head over and grab a little bite to eat and something to drink and enjoy the meal.
Okay, when they were fishing for fish that had teeth, like pike, northerns, and walleyes, brass leaders were used. A lot of these were found in inventories, and it's just a brass wire that an eye is twisted on the top. This is also wrapped around the shank of the hook, and these usually were anywhere from 9 to 18 inches long, and this prevented the fish from biting through the line that you were using. Okay, these are some of the different types of fishing setups that were used during 17th and 18th century. These here were used to catch cod off the shores of Newfoundland. These represent squid lures, and they're weighted, of course, with the large cod hooks. There were 2 to 3 men in a small boat. They'd go out with these hand lines, catch the fish, gut them out on the water, and then bring them back to shore where they had drying stations. And then they were loaded on bigger ships to go back to France, and they were heavily salted. This little thing here, here's a clamshell. This was hooked onto a line, and then at night the clams open up, and this was bounced off the bottom, and when it hit an open clam, the clam would close up onto this, wouldn't actually get hooked, but just would hold onto it, and then that was harvested, and button factories used the clamshells for buttons. And there's some various harpoons and spears for spearing fish, some ice chisels that were used during for ice fishing, and before 1720, the Indians used fish decoys. They jigged up and down through the ice and to attract the fish, and then they were able to spear it. The decoys then were made out of shells, and they had access to files and sandstone, and the shells were shaped into a small fish. Of course, the light glimmered off of this. This particular one here, the jigging stick is a rib bone of a buffalo, and the line is made out of cordage that was twisted from the inner bark of a basswood tree. Of course, a fish net, and what I use for floats are pieces of sumac. They're easy to hollow out. This is an example of the various types of hooks, sizes of hooks that were used. These here were made out of bone. These were tied to a line, and bait was buried on these. These were jigged up and down as when the fish snatched one of these, this would get stuck in its gills. And if you notice on all these hooks, there are no eyes. And we discussed that a little bit before about how you tied a line onto these. The back end was peen. They go anywhere from small panfish hooks all the way up to cod hooks. The most common hooks that I find in the different inventories are these hooks like this that are about 2 inches long. Those were called catfish hooks. And of course, in the ice fishing and on these boats that they're catching these codfish, they used a gap to get a good grip on the fish when they yanked it out. Okay, the colonial fish hooks, the common ones did not have an eye on the end of the shaft. They were clean flat. And how you tied your line to this, you tied a knot on your line, was laid up along the shaft, then another piece of line was wrapped around it like if you were whipping the end of a rope. So when your line pulled on it, it tightened up even more, and this flattened out part jammed it. So that's how that stayed on there. And there's a display there of the different size hooks. but I've caught fish with these, and it's just you don't really have to worry. I don't worry about them being tempered or not. A lot of them were made out of old needles, so they had to be annealed and re-tempered. But these smaller ones are pretty tough for this size wire, and they're easy to make for me anyway. I just have a small anvil, some files, and I'm able to form these to the shape that they would have been.
Well, here we are in the Wakely kitchen. Looks like the ladies are getting ready to make breakfast. Would you like to tell us what you're doing?
Yeah, but first off, over here we're making strawberry rhubarb muffins for breakfast. Test out our new cast iron muffin pan.
Hi, and here we're going to be mixing our flour and our sugar, and we're going to use that with our strawberries, and we're going to have a little surprise this morning. Thank you.
Hi, I got breakfast here already. Scrambled eggs and sausage links and these little round donuts that I don't know how to pronounce the name of. What do you call them?
Edelskiever.
Yeah, these things.
Well, I'll have to come back later on and try breakfast.
Oh, they're really.
My name is Matt Liebeck. I shoe horses locally, and I'm just doing this for fun today. But we're just here to show what blacksmithing is about, and I like to tell people that it's not just a dead art. It's something that some of us do every day to earn a living still. And I brought a few things to show how they're made. This is a horseshoe that's half done. You can see we've got the crease in one side and the heel hammered on. This is a chain that I made, forge welded all the links together and made a hook on the end. You just have to remember the blacksmith did everything from silverware to chains to, like Ken likes to tell people, to pulling teeth and doctoring.
Well, my name is Ann Kruger, and I am putting some warp on this loom. This is a rigid heddle loom, so there's not a lot of moving parts. This is the only moving part. Right now it's stationary. It's sitting here as I'm putting the warp in. And then half of the threads are going through a long slot, and the other half of the threads are going through the hole. So the threads that go through the hole when I'm doing my weaving, those will be the ones that move up or down. The ones that are in the long slot will stay stationary. So then that is how you would create that hole that I call a shed. And the shed is what you would pass the shuttle through from side to side to create your weaving. This is just a worsted weight cotton that I'm using, and I'm hoping to get it warped up so that I can weave some dishcloths.
Okay, well, as my sign says there, I am Bear Heart, and I say this is my trading post, and I am a tatted lace maker. I have different things that I've tatted. I have jewelry for the kids and tatting for the adults. I have been doing Wakely Inn since 1988, so I've been a regular here. I am the lace maker.
Good morning, my name is Glenn and I'm from the Madison area, and I'm here at this festival this weekend weaving Navajo style rugs. Been doing this for about 25 years. And I'm in the finishing process of this particular weaving, but it's still going to take me about 10 hours to finish this weaving.
Well, women in the 1700s, this was a major project for them, is keeping their families clothed. So they spent a good share of their time spinning, weaving, and constructing clothing. So the very first thing you would have to do is shear the sheep and then wash and comb the fibers, and then you could spin it. You still have to ply it to make yarn. Now, a lot of spinning around in the 1700s was done on flax, especially in this area. Flax grew wild here. They would cut it and dig ditches, lay it in the ditches, cover it with water, and that water would rot the stalks. So after several days, they'd take the stalks out and they'd beat them with sticks, and that would open up the stalks, and they'd remove the fibers from them. And then they'd rinse and comb those out. What that made was linen fabric. They'd spin that and put it on looms, and that made the fabric. So most working class people didn't have a lot of clothing. A couple outfits, one for good, one for working in. The good clothes became working clothes when they wore out. They patched things, they handed it down. They wasted no fabric because it was such a lot of work to make it. You know, and that's, unless you were the wealthier class where you could purchase it, that was a part of daily life.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Madame Duque, and what I said is good morning. My name is Madame Two Tails, and I do toys and games. All the toys and all the games have been in existence prior to 1840. Zooming in on the table, you see my puzzles. Again, the wooden puzzle, of course, has no colors, no corners, but a wonderful puzzle for kids to put together. In the basket here, we have our button on a string. They're called whirligigs. We also have unique puzzles for adults. That one is like a tanagram, goes in the letter T. But if you come over here to my games, you can see we have a variety of games, for a lot of them for two-player. And one of the most interesting is here, the tabletop 9-pins. Now, 9-pins came through the northern colonies, and men and women of all classes enjoyed it. But what happened in 1636 is so many people were playing it, they outlawed 9-pins. But then we got the wonderful Americans and their creativity. They added 1 pin and called it bowling. So they weren't against the law. This board is for a game called Fox and Grease. This is 9-Man Morris. And what looks like tic-tac-toe was originally called noughts and crosses. And right now I have it set up for what's called 3 in a row, or Terry Lapili, where the X's are trying to get where the O's are, and the O's are trying to get where the X's are, without jumping. At the end there we've got Shut the Box, a long time favorite game to teach adding. Back in the box we have jacks, and if you look at the white looking things, which are sheep knuckles, supposedly the original jacks. One of the favorites of small children is this little bear on the shepherd's hook over here. And that's a climbing bear. And what we ask them to do is make him climb to the top. Many of them are trying to use it as a puppet, but actually it's a toy that teaches how to milk a goat or milk a cow, because the children had many chores, of course, in this age. And then over here we have some toys. Some of the favorites. Jacob's Ladder, which fascinates many. We also have our acrobats, which fascinates boys and girls. The dolls of the period, mostly cloth dolls. The one with the face, if you were very rich, that's the one you would have. We have our regular hoops with sticks that they can create any kind of journey with that. try to make a circle around. And then lastly, we have 2 pieces of wood over here and a rope. And this is the land version of a game called Cat and Mouse. It's usually played in canoes. And the long rope is kind of like a tug of war, but they were trying to get the other person in the water. This is the land version. And if you notice, that one rocks, so you have to have balance. So yes, I enjoy all my toys and games. And I hope you would come to Pioneer Days or Point Basse and enjoy it with us. Thank you.
Okay. A little more. First we put the twist into the strands, and now we start 3 strands into one. Now we're laying on this end, laying the strands together. We have a rope.
Bill White, and I do a fur trade demonstration. But what I add to it is I have a lot of the all the articles that the native people would have had before the fur trade came in, before they could trade for more modern stuff. So these are all the things they made. They didn't need the European goods, but in some cases it made their life easier, especially women and men. I'll talk about that in a second. But you see here I've got all kinds of stuff, and I'll just point out a couple things. Over here we have a buffalo stomach that they used to cook in. And then when the fur trade came in, it made it easier for the wife, because I could only cook in that maybe 6-7 times before it fall apart. But then if I could trade for a nice metal pot, my wife liked it much better because I could cook over and over and over this, and I could cook over a fire. There, I'd have to put hot rocks in the water to heat it up to put my dried berries and meat and stuff in. So it made it much faster and much easier to have a pot like this here. My eating instruments, I would take and make out of, everything came from nature. So a turtle shell became my bowl, a buffalo scapula became my plate. Then from the buffalo, the horns, I would have my drinking cup, I would have my spoon, and I'd have my ladle for scooping up out of my porridge out of there, or my stew out of there. Other parts of the buffalo, I'd take the buffalo bladder, and I would tan it, and this would be for collecting water. I go down, 6, 7 of these, go down to the stream, the river, and collect my water and carry it back to the village in this. I could also use it for making sewing kits out of it. I have a friend of mine who made a beautiful sewing kit. All our sewing stuff goes in the buffalo bladder. So everything from the buffalo they used. In the wintertime, my wife would make me a pair of moccasins with the buffalo hair to the inside, much warmer, to keep my feet nice and warm. Over here I have a porcupine tail. The tail doesn't have the barbs on it, so I don't get stabbed with it, but I'd use this for a hairbrush. And just a couple other things here. I'd use the shin bone of a deer. I can make a nice awl for punching holes for my leather when I sew it. And I could also carve it down to like a point like this here. I'd put in my spear points and arrow points I can make out of the bone. I'd also make those out of flint too, or different rocks. And in the shell like this here, I can take a rock and I can sharpen it up pretty good, and I can cut pretty good with this. I can cut myself if I get it sharp enough. So I'd use that. Cordage, I would take cordage like this here. You can use dog bane, you can use basswood, you can use milkweed. I use willow, the inner bark of a willow. It's like this here, and then I make it into rope like this here. I would take it off the tree, peel the inner bark off, get a pot, soak it with wood ash and water for about an hour. It changes color, but it makes it stronger. And then when I want to use it, I'll wet it up, and it gets like spaghetti, and then I can start making my cordage out of it, or my rope.
Okay, my name is Miss Kathy. I'm a volunteer here at Point Basse, the school. We have tours and information about the schools. I'm the school teacher. Back in the day, I would have been single, young, about 16, and making about 25 cents a month. I'd be living with other farmers around the area and coming to school and doing all the chores that teachers needed to do, cleaning chimneys, cleaning bathrooms, getting the water, making sure the school is ready for the kids when they came in.
Hi, I'm Barb Kleifkin. I am a master gardener, and this is our quilt block garden. Every year we choose a quilt block to use our annual flowers in a design, and this year we've chosen the tulip, which you can see over there. The design is hanging up there, and we just planted this about 2 weeks ago, so the flowers are not showing up as good as it probably will in a few weeks, but I think it shows up enough so that you can see it. At the same time, we bring our quilts out during the festival so people can see what quilts are and the art of quilting. So we're trying to encourage gardening, and at the same time we're trying to encourage quilting, both which are historical. And at the same time, the gardening is trying to teach people to feed themselves. I don't know if Jim has been over by the historical garden or not, but we have the vegetable garden. Jim might go over there. We have a vegetable garden over on the other side, which goes back into the 1800s and the type of vegetables that they grew back then. When there was no food and no grocery store, you just couldn't go down and get it. So we have the quilt block garden, which you see here, and we have the birds and butterfly garden, which is right next to the school. If Jim switches his camera to show the one. This was all weeds about 5 years ago, and the ladies just went nuts. And pretty much with donated flowers did this awesome garden. And the birds and the bees and the butterflies just love it. And then over here, they did the same thing all the way around the school. They have flowers in here, and then they have hostas down here, so it's made it a lot more attractive of a place. And at the same time, just about 2 years ago, we added the Monarch Way Station. And one of our gardeners, Annette Boden, She does this herself. Her husband made this butterfly that you see here out of wood. And one of our other gardeners, whose husband is Mark Clavine, made this beautiful butterfly that we have here. And he makes garden objects and sells them. And this monarch station feeds the butterfly and it feeds the caterpillar, which are two different things that the butterfly needs. So come back again in a few weeks when everything is large, and then you'll really appreciate it.
I'm Ray Glazner. I'm a former teacher and historian. I'm a consultant to several major museums like the Smithsonian and a few others. And I've been retired since 1988, and I go to events like this, living history events. I even run one myself in August, and I represent a Scottish trader who's old and was a former soldier at one time and is now out on the frontier running a trade goods store called Dry Goods. I'm out and I sell things that you would find on the frontier in North America, Canada, and the U.S. And I try to be as correct as I can as to what I'm carrying. I carry a little bit of everything, although I'm trying to go out of business. It's just not working. Every time I try to go out, I end up with more stuff. But I want to teach, because I believe that if we don't learn the lessons of history, we will repeat them. And I spend as much time as I can teaching people about our history and our culture and everything else.
As people lived in the older times, they needed to get out in the wintertime to be able to to get out to do things. Sometimes it was hunting, sometimes it was getting around. And one of the ways they got around was with snowshoes. Traditional snowshoes they used were looking something like this. This would be made out of, these in particular are made out of white ash with rawhide. And so I was able to learn from a man who's been making them for 60 years, and I'm just working on lacing a set of snowshoes that so that when they're done they will look like this. This particular style would be a Michigan or a Maine style, and it can be used like as I mentioned for going out and into the woods. And I also have a number of different styles here. If you look here, I've got some Hurons, I've got some Green Mountain Bear Paws, I have a set of Ojibways, and then a number of other pairs of the Michigans and or the Maine style.
Well, it was important in Wisconsin to have warm clothing for your family. So women spent time spinning wool into yarn and then knitting warm items for them. So a woman's hands, I think, were never idle. So lots of probably socks and hats and mittens, and this is a pair of baby booties knit from alpaca.
Well, here's the Astor Gardener's Heritage Garden that they were talking to us about at the schoolhouse. We'll just kind of go up to the fence here and see what they have on the inside. So they have some nice heirloom tomato plants there. See a few other plants and stuff that are just coming up. So looks like they may have a good harvest here this year. The beans are coming up, getting ready to go up the pole. Got some dill there, an onion. And down here they have some herb, a little herb garden. Well, there's the Wood County Master Gardener's 20th anniversary sign. They've been in existence for 20 years, and so they're celebrating their anniversary year this year. And here's some more of their herbs that they have growing. Got some nice winter onions going right there, and some horseradish. And over here we have some peas that are getting ready to climb up the little wattle fence. Here we are. They're cutting up with the ice block. And I believe they're going to get ready to put it into the ice grinder so they can grind it up into smaller pieces and then end up putting it into a round for making ice cream. So let's kind of see what he does here. So he sawed part way through the block. Now he's got his little chopper and he just put that thing off, and now he's making it into smaller chunks. Now these chunks now, we'll take that and it'll go into a grinder. So he gets to grind that up now, and it comes out the other end as smaller little cubes. So now you can see right around the outside edge of the bucket there, that's where the ice, little ice cubes end up going so that they can make the ice cream. So it's just a constant matter of turning that crank, and it takes them about 20-25 minutes before ice cream is available. And can't wait for that to get done so we can have a little sampling of ice cream.
We are shaving ice. It's basically an ice plane. And it's turning it into like an early snow cone. And if you can pack it, just turns right into snow, like a snowball. And it works quite fast. You'll see in a minute here, I can fill that reservoir right up. And he shaves the ice down and turns it into what would be early version of a snow cone.